Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast, your source for insights and ideas on how to lead your church in the 21st century. At the Future Christian Podcast, we talk to pastors, authors, and other faith leaders for helpful advice and practical wisdom to help you and your community of faith walk boldly into the future. Whether you're a pastor, church leader, or a passionate member of your faith community, this podcast is designed to challenge, inspire, and equip you with the tools you need for impactful ministry. And now for a little bit about the guest for this episode.
Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. Today, Loren Richmond Jr. welcomes Dennis Sanders back to the pod. Dennis Sanders is an ordained Disciples of Christ minister and lead pastor of First Christian Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. A native of Flint, Michigan, and a big fan of the Detroit Tigers and Lions, Dennis is also a communications specialist for a Lutheran congregation in the Twin Cities, and is the host of the Church and Main podcast, which tries to live out Karl Barth's quote of reading the Bible and the newspaper and interpreting the news through the Bible. Dennis lives in Minneapolis with his husband Daniel and their cats. A reminder before we start today's conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share Future Christian with a friend. Connect with Loren, Martha, and Future Christian on Instagram. Shoot us an email at loren@resonatemediapro.com with comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes. We appreciate your voice in how we faithfully discern the future of the church.
Hey, and welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. This is Loren Richmond Jr., and I'm pleased to be recording live and in person from Disciples General Assembly here in Memphis, Tennessee. And this is becoming what I'm hoping, Dennis, will be a long-staying tradition of us doing like a General Assembly of the Disciples of Christ, episode. So Dennis is unfortunately not here with us, but Dennis.
Yeah,
what do you want to say?
It is a kind of a tradition. Didn't work out this year to be together in person, but I'm hoping whenever we meet again that we will do this together live in the same town.
Yeah.
So I think the first question I want to ask is, how are things going at General Assembly? What are you learning? How is it different from Louisville in 2023? And going from there.
I think one thing that has been noticeable is the format feels slightly different in that it's kind of wrapped around a weekend, or at least start for the weekend. So I think that obviously I can imagine challenging for pastors in some way is that all these pastors are having to find coverage for Sunday morning. But I also do think it's a nice move towards folks who might be bivocational in that they're not having to take off as much time off work, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's a nice way to support local churches. I attended Jeff Mitchell's church Sunday morning, and it was I'm sure many other folks went to other churches in the vicinity. So I think that's a great way to support local churches too.
One of the things that I read was something from Jeff Gill, who is also a Disciples pastor. He was kind of talking about General Assembly's past and some of the challenges that are facing the General Assembly. One of the things that I know that was talked about, I have not heard much from here, being in Minneapolis, but the way that the design has been kind of rejiggered, we're supposed to have our next General Assembly 3 years from now, but we have not. We don't know where that is going to be because we have not yet put any type of contracts or anything And part of that is because of declining attendance. And, and, I remember my first General Assembly was in 1999. And I think that one had probably, I want to say close to 7,000 or 8,000 that showed up.
Wow. Wow.
And I know that when I was in Louisville 2 years ago, it was supposed to project around 3,000. I think Jeff even said it did not even hit that. And there was a lot of talk about this General Assembly in Memphis being even lower. Since I'm not there, I can't judge that, but
I mean, I think this is interesting, and I think this is a good way to make this conversation applicable to more than just disciples of Christ. Listeners, because this is relevant to, I think, broadly speaking, mainline, and even like, I think evangelical context is just like, how do you make, because, and it's funny, I got to meet Jeff in person like half an hour ago. So we'll have to make sure, at least for me, and I'm assuming you don't mind doing this, we'll put his Substack in our show notes. But I think his Substack was interesting when he talked about the challenge of this conference, so to speak, as it really was kind of just a conference, but for, I guess, non-disciple sisters, I call it a conference, but being kind of like an institutionalist event. And, institutionalists mostly being older and dying off. And then this event has kind of niched to be more geared towards progressive institutionalists, which I think certainly there's been some hint. Maybe those not progressive would probably say stronger than hints. So yeah, it's interesting.
Though I would say, I wonder if it's being more. I mean, I think that you're correct in some point of the progressive institutionalists, but that it's also geared towards, as Jeff talks about, the idealists as well.
Right.
Aren't as interested in kind of all of the maybe the nuts and bolts and some of the things that I think I would be, because I kind of consider myself an institutionalist, and I'm interested about things about how are things going to help a local church, how are things going to things that I think can be helpful. I don't always see as much, but it is more geared to the idealists and some of the things that they're interested in. And I don't want it to be to the point of, well, we should ignore them. That's not my point.
Right.
But it's kind of a where the balance is tilting.
Yeah, I think, I hate to say this out loud, but I kind of already did, but I think the first day there was like a resolution to condemn Project 2025. And as much as I don't like Project 2025, I just wondered, like, what is the point of a denomination or institution of less than, let's say 200,000 people in a nation of 300 million? Like, why are we wasting our time on this? I don't know if I hope that's not too harsh.
I don't think it is harsh. But I think, you were trying to bring this out beyond just our denomination.
Right.
And I think that there's a concern. I think we're still operating in a way that when I think, especially mainline churches, but even just the church in general, I think had more influence in our culture, and people who were in powerful positions listened to what the church had to say. And I don't think that we are in that culture anymore.
No.
Even among people who may agree with us that something like Project 2025 is not a good thing, I don't think they care whether the disciples of Christ thinks that's a good idea. So the question is, what does that mean? It's not that we don't pay attention to what's going on in the world, but I think the way that we used to operate and I think you maybe even shared this, you've been sharing a book that you've been reading about the importance of that, we want to feel like we have to be heard in our society. And I think that way that we do it might have worked in the 70s and 80s. I just don't think it works now.
Yeah, the book is The Mixed Ecology. It's a new book coming out from Dwight Shiley, and I think it's his wife, Blair Pogue. Is that Pogue? Is that how you say it?
I think so. I have a hard time trying to pronounce his name. So.
For sure, it's not saying it, spelling it. That's for darn sure. I really appreciate their work, and I've followed Dwight's work in the past. But I'm trying to find the quote here now. Oh, yeah, it says political and social advocacy is another way in which churches can operate from a Christendom mindset. Denominations and other church bodies make social statements and pronouncements on various political issues with the assumption they have moral credibility and will influence the nation. So I thought it was very fascinating when so many of, especially our more progressive folks, are railing against Christendom for good reason.
We still want Christendom, or at least we
act
like,
Right. So it's like we don't want it, but in some ways we do want it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we don't want is, I think, who is running Christendom.
Right.
And I think in this case, it would be more evangelical, especially Christian nationalists, because we want to run Christendom. And the whole point of this is, it's bad. It doesn't matter who's the person running it. It could be just a better run Christendom. That doesn't make it. That's not the point. And I think, especially in our culture now, not that Christendom was ever really a good thing, but it really doesn't work anymore because no one cares about what we think. And so then we have to think about, what does that mean? And what does it mean then to operate as a church in culture with all the things that we're dealing with, especially in our current time. And I think, to me, what's more important is, how are we being a witness to Christ in our time? And those are some of the things I think are more important that I want to focus on, and not necessarily here's this statement that we can all feel good that we just passed that no one else cares about.
Right. I mean, again, to be clear, like, neither one of us support Project 2025.
Nope. No. It is bad. So I guess one question that I have, having you had your experience in Memphis, and you've been there since Friday. Where do you think General Assembly is going? And maybe to open up to listeners who aren't disciple, but maybe Presbyterian or Episcopalian or whatever, where do these gatherings go? One of our, again, and the other Jeff that we talk about, Jeff Mitchell, has sometimes said that he thinks this is the last General Assembly. I hope he's not right, because I think that these things still have some value. Right. But I think maybe where he's getting at does have something. There's some value in what he's saying. So what is the future of this?
I mean, obviously, like, you and I are not insiders by any stretch. That's probably obvious even already in our conversation, right? We're not insiders. I was talking to a buddy here I'm with, and I guess there's some rumors, there's some conversation, some chatter around Kansas City, because in 2027, I guess it'd be 28, will be the 60th anniversary you can say it better than I can.
Restructure, kind of when we became a denomination.
Which I guess was in Kansas City. So to have it back in Kansas City would make sense. There's also a strong disciples presence in Kansas City. So I think it makes sense, broadly speaking, to focus on having it in regions of the country where there's a strong disciples presence.
It's also very
So,
centrally located.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I think Memphis, I don't know how it is for others because I live in Denver. So it's not generally hard for me to get out of Denver to other places. But I think centrally located places with a strong disciples presence obviously kind of limits you to, Kansas City, Tennessee,
Probably
Louisville, I
Texas.
suppose. Texas for sure would be another. Um, but I guess broadly speaking, to your point, like I always think there's value if anything for this. Like when I was, it's a Monday afternoon. On Friday night when I was at the Denver airport, getting ready to get on the plane, and I was, of course, spotted some other disciples clergy there, and one of them is working at a UCC church right now, United Church of Christ Church. And this person was like, "Oh, it's so much more fun to be at the Disciples General Assembly than the UCC Synod, which is happening concurrently right now in Kansas
In
City."
Kansas City.
Yeah, so I think if even from that, like, they talk about often. I mean, this is the good and bad, right, Dennis? We'd agree. Like, Disciples is like a big family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's good, except when you're like the adopted kid, and then no one gives a crap who you are, which I think Dennis, you and I can relate to, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm being too cynical here, aren't I?
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I'm not there this year is that,
Yeah.
especially last time, and there were good points of last year, and 23 was weird for me personally, just because my mom had a stroke, and there was just a lot of uproar and everything. But it just did not. I think one of the things that has been always good about General Assembly is that it feels like a big old family reunion, and it didn't do like that.
Yeah.
This time around. And so it kind of colored my perception, about going this year, because I just did not want to feel like the redheaded stepchild again.
Right.
That is something I want to hopefully recapture, is that sense that, and this was in talking with another disciple pastor, that really we can really kind of recapture the breadth and depth of the denomination, and that, that we are kind of a truly diverse and in many different ways, and to try to bring that, because I don't feel that I don't know what it's like now in Memphis, but when I was in Louisville, I felt like that was lost.
Well, let's talk about that if we can, because I think it's been very obvious, and this is something that I really appreciate. Like last night, thinking about this, is like the disciples are very diverse from a race and ethnicity standpoint, and I very much appreciate that. And I feel like GA goes out of their way to highlight that in a good way.
And I think that's wonderful. As speaking as
Right.
African American, I think that's great.
But I'm thinking of, again, Jeff Gill's Substack, in that he talked about not necessarily being inclusive of conservative or moderate voices. And I wonder, how do you, like I was talking about this with a friend over lunch, like how could this be structured in a way to be more inclusive of those other perspectives theologically? Like, would it be like a certain speaker? What are your thoughts?
I think part of it is a certain speaker. But I also think, even there has to be some give, that progressives don't get bent out of shape if a conservative says something a little bit different, and vice versa.
Right.
Though I also kind of wonder, and this is actually speaking to something that had just experienced, and that you are going to experience, through something called the Iowa Preachers Project. And what I learned from that experience, and it was that group that I was in was made up of people from both liberal and conservative denominations that were more gay friendly and others that weren't. and yet we held together. And
Yeah.
I think what was central about that was the preaching and the centrality of the gospel. And I think that's something that has to be the center thing, the thing that holds us together. Because I think what is a problem in the modern church today is that as much as we may talk about Jesus or all the time, we're really held together by our ideologies. And this is not a progressive problem or just a conservative problem. It's both sides.
Yes.
And so I think if we want to be more, to have a wider breadth, it also means we have to really change our reference, that it's not about the things that we do, but it's really about who are we centering it on. And of course, I'm centering it on Christ and not on whatever greatest progressive or conservative piece of statement that we want to get out.
Yeah. So for kicks and grins, Dennis, ideate with me for a minute. Like, who would be a speaker that would resonate with conservative voices, conservative perspectives, who would not be like, obviously you don't want to invite someone who's like off the rails, but like someone suggested like Adam Hamilton, although is he middle of the road enough?
I think he
wondered,
is.
Like Carrie Newhoff, but I don't know if he would come because he probably thinks he's too big of a deal.
I don't know. He's an interesting one. And I think the added thing about Carrie Newhoff is that he comes, because he's Canadian, it's just a totally different mindset. So it's just kind of, where do you kind of put that? I mean, he's someone that I think would be interesting. Jason Micheli, who I've, talked about, is also a good one.
He's UMC, is that correct?
He's UMC. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Methodist.
I'm trying to think, though, unfortunately she's getting older and probably with traveling is an issue, is someone like a Fleming Rutledge.
Sure.
I think,
yeah.
I would say in some ways politically liberal, but,
right. Very gospel
centered. And I think would just be great. Will Willimon is another one.
Yeah. That's good.
Had him.
Yeah.
It's not going to, those names are not going to please everyone, but I think that there's enough in what they say that they could bring people to the table and want to hear something.
Yeah, because I think, who was I talking about? Oh, I was interviewing I did another podcast this morning with Doug Poe, the president of Phillips Seminary. It may release before or after this conversation, but I was asking him as a Methodist what he thinks, his perspective of the General Assembly, and I told him this is similar to Methodism, but the thing that I really appreciate about the disciples tradition is that like all are welcome at the table, no matter what. And I think that was what pained me to read Jeff Gill's post, is like, well, gosh, it seems like we're kind of setting up some barriers, whether purposeful or accidental, that we're having a big table here, but not everyone's here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the issue, and I mean, I've seen it in the workshop. One of the big things for me has always been the workshops, and when I was in Des Moines in 2019, there were a lot of good workshops that were on the for the local church. That when I went to Louisville 4 years later, I didn't find very much. That was sort of distressing. Now there was a lot more on things like activism, and there is a role for that, but it felt like that was the only thing. And it was kind of like, are we talking about helping people who may be interested in planting new churches, or are we talking about People who
Mhm.
want to revitalize current churches. There was a really good workshop about churches moving or selling property, which
Mhm.
obviously
Mhm.
I fell into that issue a few years later. That was
Yeah, I think
helpful.
I was in that workshop, or I think we didn't know each other back then, but I think I went to that
Yeah.
at least one of those workshops.
Okay.
So it was
So,
interesting.
I mean, I think those things were also helpful. And,
Hmm.
Orlando, and I think they may have brought some of that back, but Orlando, I remember they were able to get Walter Brueggemann and there
Mm.
was some really
Hmm.
good Bible study early in the morning,
Right.
to the
Yeah.
end of the day. And that was really good to see that. Um, Things that I
Yeah,
think
I'm
can
trying to.
help people learn, just get
Yeah.
good things for helping pastors, but even lay leaders that they can take and can grow in their faith or be edified in their faith. I think those are things that are important.
Hmm. Hmm. We want to talk about our failed attempt at a resolution, Dennis.
Oh God. Yes, let's talk about it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get that. We've been hot takeish a little bit, so let's get really hot takeish, right?
Hmm. No, I think we should talk about it because I think that that's important. And I feel like it kind of fits what's going on, what maybe has been going on in the denomination.
Hmm.
So why don't you set us up and then I can kind of go
So
from there.
I can't remember if this was your idea or my idea, Dennis, but I remember at some point us talking and me saying like, yeah, let's have. Oh, because I had read Ben Crosby's points where he had made a similar Substack. I don't know if I can find the original Substack, but about kind of lamenting these, like we talked about with Project 2025, is in his case the Episcopal Church, like spending so much time at their version of this, creating resolutions that again they're not much bigger than the disciples when their denomination, similar to ours, is on a vast, stark decline, and his the opinion were that we should be spending more time on renewal and revitalization and revival.
Hmm.
So I said maybe we should just try to do a resolution on prayer and revival for 2025. And boy, I did not realize the hoops that you have to go through to get.
Well, and yeah, and you can explain that it seemed like there were a lot of hoops that you had to go through in order for that resolution to become a live issue.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Like I had a Zoom with someone in the GMP office. I won't say names, but I had a Zoom and nothing negative, but I had a Zoom and then we had like I think another Zoom, if I remember correctly. I could be misremembering, but this is fine. And I tried to be clear, like this is not me trying to be some like evangelical conservative screed. Like I'm just trying to say like we're a denomination decline. Like, and I believe in our tradition. Like, let's pray for a revival. Can we just do that?
Yeah, and it just seemed like I think I remember that there had to be, you know, all of these ducks in a row on
Hmm.
things, and it just didn't seem like there was just that much of a, you kind of had hope that maybe from the the office of the general minister that there would just be kind of, yeah, this is good,
All right, let's make this happen.
and it nope, this could not get that to happen, and I don't know why that was. You know it didn't seem like there was interest and some I do wonder if there was some suspicion.
Oh, I know there's suspicion. Like the Zoom, I felt like the first 20 minutes were me like talking them down, like me being like, "This isn't what you think it is. This isn't what you think it is. This isn't what you think it is." You know?
Which is funny because even within the resolution, it's not like it was that, we were making some kind of a move towards
Right,
Christian nationalism or something.
right, right. Yeah. So I mean, I think two observations I have, or one I would kind of second what you just noted about kind of wishing there was more fervor or alignment from leadership around such an idea. But two, I think this kind of is perhaps the detriment of this kind of structure is like, it's hard to get something off the ground if you're just an outsider and you don't have institutional power, you know?
Yeah, and I think that is part of the problem is that if you have an interest in things such as revival or prayer,
Right.
there really isn't a constituency, it seems. It, not in the same way as some of the constituencies would be for other issues.
Right.
And so it's just, and I think, I don't know, maybe it's just the way that our society is set up is that, so if we don't say something that isn't explicitly progressive, then it's immediately viewed with suspicion. And so it just makes it hard and very difficult for anything to move forward because, if it's not on the side that you favor, then we're just not going to trust it.
And tell me what you think of this too, Dennis. I'm wondering, like, you and I, if I understand correctly, right? We're both not quote unquote native disciples, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So even when I was at the airport, amongst this really, really handful of folks traveling to GA, it was like, oh, I went to camp with you when I was your church counselor when you were a teenager, and you were her counselor when she was a teenager, and that kind of it lends itself to the family metaphor of the family reunion for good reasons, but also I think it's hard for folks to recognize who are in that, like how insular it makes it towards bringing new people into the fold.
Yeah, I feel the same way because I think our camping ministry in the Upper Midwest is big. I mean, it's very important. It's a very central part of the operations of the region. And so it can feel, at least for me, kind of outside of it because I didn't grow up in that.
Right. And to be clear, like, this is great.
Yeah.
Church camp is great.
No one's putting it down. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does, there is a kind of a outsider pull about that. So, but I think, you had talked about what might be happening in a few years, that Kansas City might be the, where we meet next. One of the things that has been a concern, and Jeff Gill talks about this, is cost.
Yes.
Because registration is really expensive now.
Yeah.
If you were someone, and I used to in the past would go to some of the dinners, those are expensive.
Yeah.
It's just really costly to do this. And as he was saying, it's hard when there isn't a lot of, where in the past maybe a church would pay people's way. They're not for a lot of reasons, doing that anymore. So, the question is, how do you bring down that cost? And I mean, that's not a big theological issue, but it is a practical issue.
Well, I hope we're not being overly critical here. Maybe we are. So my apologies to listeners and especially disciple listeners if we're being overly critical. Like we're saying this, I think Dennis, you would second this. We're saying this out of like deep care and appreciation for a tradition and denomination that welcomed us.
Mm-hmm.
But even as I'm literally here right now recording in the exhibit hall, and all the sponsors are internal sponsors, which is fine. But I'm also thinking about
used to be the case. It used to have a lot of outside exhibitors.
And I'm thinking about even like how the structure of the layout of the exhibit hall is that external visitors are all kind of in the back corner. And I feel like if they would just have flipped it, because like the big exhibitors, like I won't say who they are, but we all know if you're disciples and imagine in your tradition or denomination, like you know who the big exhibitors are. Like they're going to draw people to them. So wouldn't you rather to retain and engage the external sponsors or exhibitors, have people have to first encounter those outsiders and then walk through those outsiders to the big draws? To me, that would make more sense. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think there is this, there's not a whole lot, at least from what I remember, the exhibit hall in Louisville, and it sounds like it's the same in Memphis, that, things like that also need to change. And I think in some ways to inspire, because it's a place where people hang out.
Right. And I think like Vanco, they're a church giving platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at them, they're kind of like buried off at a corner. And like we need more, like those are the kind of external organizations. When we think just about cost, we need external church focused organizations like that to keep coming and subsidize the cost of this.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, like we need to flip the hall so that people first encounter them, at minimum, just walk by and see the booth, and get some traffic so that it makes it feel worth their time and money. Because like the giant exhibitors that we know who they are, like they're going to get, like, I'll just say, like the pension fund is going to get traffic. Like I'm looking at the pension fund, love the pension fund. Pension fund is great. They're going to get traffic. And in fairness to the pension fund, they're actually towards the back too. But to my point, like I would flip it just so again, we're engaging external vendors and making it worth their time for being here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it used to be we would have vendors such as Cokesbury. And that was a huge draw, and we don't have that anymore. And, I still like to read actual physical books. So it would be nice if they had things like that, because that was something that you wanted to go to. There were people who sold, stoles or,
I mean, they're all here.
Yeah.
Again, I just think like those are the people who should be like
front and center.
Yeah, front and center. Because like I get like these denominational ministries gave a lot of money, and I want to honor them, but they're gonna have a big draw just because of who they are, because of freestanding relationships. So if we're gonna help these kind of smaller organizations continue to be attracted and gain from being here, let's get them as much traffic as we can. If we're just thinking like practically about managing costs,
I agree. I think though the question also is, do we need to have things taking place like in a big convention center as we used to? Could that be?
And this is
in a hotel. I don't know. That's just something I don't do logistics like that, but
I mean, I've wondered about this too. certainly there's hotels that are pretty big. Like I've been at conferences for unchurch related work conferences that exist at like the Gaylord or convention, like hotels of that size that are pretty big and can handle, like I was in a Gaylord for a non-church work conference and there were like multiple conventions happening at the hotel. And I wonder, like, could you get a deal there to make it more manageable? And you're booking so many rooms and I don't know. I'm not a hospitality expert, but I think these are the kind of outside the box thoughts we need to think about for sure to make this more manageable. And who knows, maybe these are already being bounced around.
So one question I have, since you have been there, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to any of the worship experiences at night. What have those been like? Have they been good, inspiring? Oh my
Well,
God, this is horrible.
I mean, Bernice King was an honor,
Mm-hmm.
Humbling and honoring to just be a part of that.
Mm.
Challenging to think this was a really inspiring story that should be lifted up for. I was never aware of, but she mentioned how this was pre the preamble, the official organization of the denomination, but the year before, her father, Martin Luther King Jr., had been invited to speak at the gathering.
Wow. Okay.
And it was going to be in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And the city officials in Dallas said, hey, you should not invite MLK. And it was, the leader was Sears. Can't remember his first name or his position. But Sears said, well, we're willing to take it elsewhere, which I think is a pretty inspiring move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To say like, we believe in inclusion and that's been part of our history from the beginning. Like I was pretty inspired to hear that. Her message was very inspiring, and powerful. I've very much appreciated being in such a large body at worship. It's kind of like a mega church on the road, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been encouraging.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Because I think that those are kind of the important of all the things that happen at a general assembly. The worship services will matter.
I think so.
And I think that there have been, for me, some really good experiences and some that fell short.
I mean, there's been a couple of moments where I kind of was wondering what's going on, and I think that's kind of how these things are. Sometimes they're trying to, it's like a sermon. Sometimes you try to do too much, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Too much in the sermon, too much in the worship service.
So I think maybe one final question that I have is, and this is kind of going back to Jeff's article, is where do you see us as a denomination? Where is our future headed?
Yeah.
I mean, numbers are not great, but I don't want to make it sound like that's, we're done. But
well, I think what is continually surprising and compelling, shocking is how much, like, there's still a lot of institutional money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not everywhere. And certainly some organizations or parts have more money than others, but like, there's still a lot of institutional money. Like, there's still pockets of vitality that are very inspiring. Yeah, I mean, I think it's my prayer that there would be revival, and I think the only thing I can say is like, and I've been reading voices about this and saying that like we can't manufacture revival. Like we can just pray and hope that when God moves, we recognize it and get on board.
Yep.
So maybe that's my prayer, is that like, that there would be revival in our nation, and that we would get on board. And if I can make a quick addendum to that too, like, this is something that I see chatter about in evangelical circles about revival happening, and I wonder, like, are we missing out?
Well, I mean, I think that is interesting. If you think a few years ago when that all was happening in
Asbury,
and
yeah,
there were some people that were quickly dismissive of it, and I think that there will always be people, especially in mainline churches, that will be dismissive of it. But I also think there will be people, maybe not large numbers, pockets, that will be interested. And that if there is revival, that's kind of how I think it will happen. Not in large, big gatherings, but in kind of pockets. And I think that's what to keep an eye out for and to have.
Yeah. Dennis, I feel like we've done this before, either you and I, or like maybe I've done this with other guests, but I feel like we should just like say a prayer for our denomination and for our nation and our churches.
Yeah, I've done that before. You're keeping in good company with our mutual friend Jeff Mitchell, who would, I think, always wants to end an interview with prayer.
Yeah.
So that is not unusual.
All right.
I'd be willing to do that if you like.
Okay, go for it.
All right. God, we thank you for gathering us here to chat and to talk. And we do pray for revival. And not just within our church, though that is needed, but within our nation, because it is sorely needed. And importantly, give us the eyes to see and the ears to hear when that is happening. Give us the heart to know when that might be moving within us. And help us to be able to spread that good news to those that we meet, regardless of who they are, so that your word, your love, and your good news might be proclaimed throughout the land. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, for my podcast to close us out, Dennis, may God's peace be with you.
And as the Lutherans like to say, and also with you.
Thanks for joining us on the Future Christian Podcast. The Future Christian Podcast is produced by Resonate Media. We love to hear from our listeners with questions, comments, and ideas for future episodes. Visit our website at future-christian.com and find the Connect with Us form at the bottom of the page to get in touch with Martha or Loren. But before you go, do us a favor. Subscribe to the pod to leave a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. Thanks, and go in peace.